Wow. You know there's a person up there in that thing? I thought being strapped into a kayak was iffy. Wow. So you're laying down in this shell with a helmet on. No. So dreams realized. We thought that today, the day after our V2B seminar, that's what it's going to be called from now on, because there will be more of them. V, number 2, letter B. Okay, V2B. We've created a culture. So we're here this morning to celebrate dreams realized. And aren't they always doing something that looks initially a little bit on the impossible side? Okay, I'm still not aiming to do that. That's not my cup of tea. But I have done some other things, and I'm sure that you have, that you didn't know you could do initially. So, of course, I thought how wonderful it would be today to talk about Field of Dreams. Field of Dreams, and the classic line from the film that says, if you build it, they will come. It's become a philosophy of sorts since the film came out. It's a cult film. It's a mantra. If you build it, they will come. Now I'll tell you that in the church growth industry, and I'm sure in some others, they say, oh no, maybe they say it now in business school. Don't necessarily assume that just because you build it, people will come. We learned yesterday that there are other laws, other principles, other parts to the formula that are absolutely necessary. Otherwise, you'll just have a nice empty building, right? But if you build it, they will come is a perfect example of a word problem. If it were a word problem in algebra, it's called an if-then problem. It's a word problem in that it offers a solution, but there's a condition in it that you must adhere to in order to get that result. So the if and the then are separated by a comma in the middle. That's like the turning point, the fulcrum. It's the fork in the road, that's the necessary step. For example, if you want to do that, you've got to go learn a lot about aerodynamics. All of the principles involved in safe flight. Not just the dream. The principles involved. And once you know them, if you know them and follow them, comma, then you can do that. So, if you build it, they will come is more than just something to be literally interpreted. And as usual, if it is only interpreted literally, and no other laws or principles involved are taken into consideration, you will discover them on the way down, or all by yourself in your empty building. You will discover them. The good news is that all of those other principles and all of those other laws, because we have been on the planet for a while, and we have been exploring a lot, and we have been discovering a lot, those are also all available. And you don't have to get a degree that takes 12 years to acquire. You don't have to wear a white coat and have a clipboard necessarily. You don't have to be a genius in one of those areas. We have the privilege, the luxury, the opportunity, the reality these days of being able to access the information that people have discovered in their research, in their experimentation. And thankfully, there are other people who have come along and put a good amount of this in plain English. They've written it down. They've distilled it to its most basic components. They put it in books. They talk about it, like they talked about it yesterday. So if you build it, they will come is actually an example of something. For one thing, it's the example of a classic combination of principles when understood and utilized in a certain way will produce an outcome. We call these principles and laws because you can count on them. They're not fickle. They don't behave differently for different people. Some examples of these are the mixing of colors. You don't have to have a degree in art to mix colors together and get them to produce a certain outcome. No, you might study how they work so that you can achieve certain hues that a greater understanding is required in order to achieve. We can go across the room and flip some of those switches and the lights will go on or off, the opposite of whatever they're set at right now. We don't have to be electricians in order to do that. However, we rely on electricians who know a lot about how electricity works. They're the ones who make it available to us, and safely, I might add. The same is true for how water flows. And we need water. Our bodies are, 70% water? Some say more. We need water for so many aspects of our lives, or we wouldn't be living, period. Do we all have to be, what is it called, aquatic engineers? Can't think of the other term right now. We don't have to. But we give thanks for and pay the engineers who make sure that they understand the principles of how water flows. Gravity is one of them. Cohesion is another one. We allow them to understand that thoroughly and bring it to us simply. So when you think about if you build it, they will come, it's more than just one simple idea. It's actually illustrative of so many more. And whenever we understand how things operate, we can use those principles in our own lives to meet our own needs, to achieve our goals, to succeed where we previously had a different experience, and so on, by understanding how they work. One of the interesting ideas that's sort of been repeating itself over the past few days, it's just been on the surface a lot, and I think that it also came out of the mouths of at least one person yesterday at our seminar, was that only those things which we don't understand bring about fear in us. And conversely, anything that we do understand can no longer scare us. We may still choose not to do it. I mean, I understand a thing or two about gravity, and I have no intention of jumping out of a plane, right? However, I'd like to know that somebody knows so that I can get on one and go from point A to point B and really feel wonderful about all of the excellence and the knowledge and understanding that the people have who put that vehicle together for me. Another thing about if you build it, they will come, which is a good example, is that there's an element of inspiration there. And there's a choice point as to whether to respond to the inspiration and do something with it. And we have examples of people like this who have made the choice to follow that inspiration and learn what they needed to learn and get what they needed to get and practice what they needed to practice in order to have the experience that they're desiring to have. So when inspiration comes, there's sort of two different aspects of that. One is that we get inspired and, oh, aren't we so fortunate? We can just go look it up on the internet and learn something without hardly moving. If you're already sitting in front of your computer, you might not have to move at all. Or if you've got, it used to be all of the people with iPhones, but now those of us with the Androids are catching up, and now they're like Coke and Pepsi, you know. But you can whip out your phone and look something up. I met a woman on the side of the road a few days ago. It was last week. I went for my ride. I came back. It was probably Thursday, because whatever it was, I had to get home, shower, dress, get my books, go teach a class. That's what it was. And I met a woman who her car broke down, her hood was up, and she was like, and I grabbed my phone and I said, okay, well, I don't really know how to help you with your car, but, and I picked it up and I said, okay, Google. And so it goes ding, and it's waiting for you to ask a question. And I asked for the number for the local AAA, because she said, I have a membership, but I didn't bring my card, And so the way that I was able to help her was to rely on that new principle that someone else had figured out and others had used and proven and made it easier for me to understand in that moment. So that a chick on a bike who didn't know squat about cars, well, except for that I don't think you're supposed to take the radiator cap off when your car's overheating. Don't do that. I was able to help her. So something happens there. One is that you get an inspiration. Okay, this is actually illustrative of a couple things. Because when you get an inspiration, you can either say, oh, I don't know anything about that. I can't do that. I can't see it. I don't know about that. I don't know how to do it. It's not possible for me. Right? That's sort of the Neanderthal response, right? I don't know it yet, so it must not exist. Thankfully, we're increasing the number of people on the planet who don't live from that place, or who do live from the other place. When you get an inspiration, ultimately you're going to come to this point where you have to do something you've never done before, where you have to discover something you don't already know. We really did it when we learned to walk. Anybody ride a bike? Okay. We did it when we learned how to ride bikes. We really do it every day if we're willing. They say that the key to aging gracefully and to maintaining sharp memory and mental acuity is to keep learning new things. So now we have things like brain gym, and we have that other thing. I can't think of what it's called right now, but it's an electronic thing for building mental acuity. So you have an opportunity when you become inspired to do something. When you dream of something, you have an opportunity to make a choice. Now this is leading up to the comma, okay? So if we're going this way, because you're reading from this side to this side, leading up to the comma, the turning point, the fulcrum, the precipice, is this thing that you must do in order to get that thing that you want to get, right? And there comes a point in time where you've done all of the research, you've looked it up on Wikipedia, you've read 9 books, you've gone to 50 seminars, you've talked to 12 friends, and now there's nothing left to do but take the leap. I remember Rick and I were at a seminar in San Diego with Reverend Ernie Chu, and he's going to be here on 4th of July weekend speaking and doing a workshop. He has a book called Soul Currency. And now this was the July of 2009. People are getting used to this idea that some sort of a market crash has taken place and is continuing to happen. And we are at a seminar where we get to realize that something beautiful is happening in the course of this seeming calamity. And I was sitting in a focus group, because we broke up into little groups, talking to people about the dream of quitting my day job and starting the Center for Spiritual Living. And there were people in my little focus group who said, you can do it. Ultimately, you just have to leap. And they were saying all that stuff like, you'll grow wings on the way down. It's time for you to, they're all just saying, you can do it. Sounds like it's time for you to take your leap. It's really very cool. I was scared at first, too. So there's even a whole culture around that spot right before you finally do it, And you realize, okay, I can't just go out and buy new pencils. That would be me. I'd go get more office supplies and say, I don't have it quite right yet. But at some point, we just have to do it. So the reward is that the outcome is assured. And why is that? It's because we're working with a principle that is consistent. We're working with a law that is not capricious, as Ernest Holmes says. It is not prejudice. It doesn't say, I'll work for you, but not for you. I'll work at this time, but not at that time. It works all the time. And of course, to the degree that we understand it, it can't scare us. We can, at the very least, make an informed decision. After yesterday, boy, do we have some information or what? There was so many, smiles and nods, so much laughter, and the realization as person after person got a piece of the puzzle that they were missing. Just fantastic. Somebody who's starting a brand new business, who learned that the name of that business was so vague that maybe no one would find it. And wouldn't that be a bummer? And there were people who talked about succeeding and seemingly failing as people's needs and desires and the tone of the market shifted with technological evolutions or market variations. And they adapted, and they laughed, and they dusted themselves off, and they got up, and they did something again. What they did again is they used the same principles that they used last time, with a fresh idea, in a new way. But it wasn't all emotional. It wasn't reactionary. It wasn't sort of like a Russian roulette or, a crapshoot or a throw of the dice or anything. It wasn't chance. It wasn't superstition. It wasn't luck. It was using those same principles. So the opportunity that we have actually every day, and we have today, in this moment, is to ask ourselves, what is my if? What is my then? You might be dreaming about your then. You might be dreaming about that outcome, that thing that you've wanted to do. It's been like ants in your pants, like a little burr in your shirt or something that just won't let you go. The beauty of that, if it won't let you go, if it keeps showing up, if it's abiding, if it's constant, it's probably meant for you. Because if it were fleeting, it wouldn't still be on your mind. So let's say you have a then. And you're over here and you've done all of the ifs that you can think of. And you're staring at that comma. You're staring at that precipice. You're staring at that turn. You're staring at that door, that moment when it's time to move forward, to make the choice. What that is the word you in this phrase. If you build it, they will come. You get to this moment right then where you is like in giant capital letters, and you realize even as you've gotten all of this inspiration and information and knowledge from everyone else, and you see that the circumstances are lining up, it's ultimately up to you. It's ultimately up to you. And nobody else can do your you moment. So what I'd like to invite you to do right now is just consider whatever that is that you've been aiming for, that you thought you were just casually thinking about, perhaps mentioning to friends in passing, but you really didn't plan to do it anytime soon. If it's not letting you go, maybe it's your then, and maybe your then is ready to be your now. If you just take that step. So the opportunity is to convert your if to your when, and your when to your now, and your then to your now, so that you're living your dream. So I invite you to do that. I know you can, and we'll fly together.